My clock says 4:01, so we might jump in. Thank you everyone for being here. As I said, we will record this whole session. So if you'd like to go back and watch it again, please feel free to do precisely that. I'll publish it to our website either this afternoon or early next week. And as you probably know, this session is for new entrants. That said, if you've entered the Tasmanian Tourism Awards before, it will still probably be valuable, particularly if you've been out of the game for a while, and there's changes every year as well. However, today's session will be a quick and dirty one. I hope to keep it to half an hour max. A couple of reasons for that. This is really just covering the basics, our entrant mentoring one-on-one sessions, as well as our 3 entrant sort of information sessions that come after this, which will be further down the line once you've probably even started gathering data to write your submission. They will be the more comprehensive sessions to really get your teeth stuck into the process around submitting an award. This is more just an introduction, particularly for those who might not be sure if entering the awards is for them, or might just have some questions around the sort of overarching details of what it looks like to enter the Tasmanian Tourism Awards. The other reason I want to keep it quick and dirty is because this is my first time coordinating the Tasmanian Tourism Awards solo. So the questions that you might have for me and the detail you might like to go into could be beyond my level of knowledge and expertise at this stage. That said, if you've got questions, please pop them in the chat box and or email me after this session, and I will do my very, very best to answer those questions. To give you some level of confidence, I was involved in the awards program last year from a coordinator point of view, but I had the inimitable Sam Denmead helping me out last year, and this year flying a little more solo. I have also been involved though in writing award submissions in previous years, so I like to think that I have some level of empathy for the blood, sweat and tears that will inevitably go into your submission. So we will jump into today's agenda, and we're going to try to cover it off in 3 quick points. So the benefits of entering the Tourism Awards, what's involved, and then understanding the judging process. So in terms of the benefits of entering the awards program, well, this is one of them. You could win one of these gorgeous trophies. Each one of our category winners will walk away with a beautiful handcrafted by a local, a team of locals, in fact, Tasmanian Tourism Awards trophy. That's not the only thing that's great about entering the awards though. There's lots of other benefits. We see a lot of these sorts of faces at our gala, but there's all sorts of other wonderful things that come along just with entering, not necessarily with winning. We think that it's really important to set the right expectations around what it takes, I suppose, to enter the awards, and to sort of get your head into a space of it being a mid to long-term process, particularly in regards to any aspirations to walk away with a gold in your category, and even with a silver or bronze. These are not easy awards to win, which I think is a really good thing. It really sort of emphasizes the credibility of the awards program, and you know, how seriously our judging teams take the awards program, in that it's not an easy task to write a submission, and less easy still to win in your category. So a really good way to think about it, a realistic way to think about entering into the awards program, is that your first year, which for many of you here today, it will be exactly that, is around building a foundation. So working out for yourself exactly what it really looks like to write a submission and to enter into the program. You will get feedback from the judges regardless of where you place, and that will then help you and springboard you into subsequent years where you can consolidate that feedback as well as what you learnt in your own process of entering the program and going through the process of writing a submission, to then consolidate everything together and write an even better submission. The great news is that in many cases you don't have to sort of rewrite a whole submission or start things from scratch. If you're entering the same or a similar category in subsequent years, it's not unusual to take your submission from a previous year and update it with new stats, new testimonies, new data, but ultimately keep the same bare bones there, the things that worked for you in previous years, and consolidate that to come up with an even better submission. And from year 3, we like to think that you can just enjoy the process. It's a little bit of a rinse and repeat. Again, obviously bringing new flavour, new data, and making sure that things are relevant for the qualifying period every year, and speaking back to the criteria of the category that you choose. But it will become an increasingly more enjoyable process the more used to it you are and the more feedback you've had along the way. So outside of winning a trophy and putting a nice outfit on to attend the Tourism Awards Gala, which are lovely parts of entering the awards, we think that the major benefits of entering this program are that it actually forces you to do a few things that you might not otherwise either have the opportunity to do or that you might not otherwise give yourself the time to do, which is things like analysing your business. So really taking a big picture view, and in some areas a really granular view of what's going on in your business and how things look, because the questions in your submission will force you to do precisely that. You'll also be able to identify opportunities. The great news about these submissions is that the judges aren't looking for the best business, the most successful or most profitable business necessarily, but the business that is most self-aware of the opportunities that it has to grow, and the business that can show that it's identified those opportunities and that it's either begun to do some work around them, or it has even completed and can now show the outcomes of that work. Certainly, the awards are a great opportunity to celebrate your successes as a business and as operators in it, and to enjoy the benefits that come along with all of this sort of analysis of your business in doing so. So what's involved? Most categories will focus on 5 core areas. You might have heard anecdotally that last year that was a little different. There were 4 core areas last year because that final one, responsible tourism, was removed, and that was with respect to the fact that most businesses in the 2021 period were really doing their best just to survive, and responsible tourism wasn't necessarily a key focus. Arguably, a lot of businesses are still in that place, and that is, that's totally appreciated in this year's program as well. And that's why there is an area that I've put in brackets there called COVID-19 impacts. And in every category, I don't think bar any, the first question that you will be asked is around how COVID-19 and, to a lesser degree, natural disasters and other world events have impacted your business. The reason I've put it in brackets and in smaller font is simply because this is not judged. There are 0 points allocated to this section. It's also not included in your word count, but it's a really important way for you to set the scene so that you don't have to then explain things in the context of COVID-19 further on in your submission. There will be probably many times that you do, particularly when you are talking about those opportunities and ways that you've overcome challenges and the outcomes of your actions around that. But we certainly do still expect that there will be impacts that are felt quite uniquely in this qualifying period due to COVID-19 and other world events. The 5 core areas, though, that most categories will focus on are an introduction, which is essentially about telling the judges what your business is, the unique value proposition that you bring, and really sort of drawing them in, painting a total picture of your business so that a judge who has never heard of you before and who's never experienced your product can really get a feel for who you are and what you do and what the experience is that you offer. Second section is around business development, the things that you're doing to grow as a business. The third is around marketing. So who is your market? How are you speaking to them? What are you doing to ensure that your messaging reaches them? And what are the outcomes of those actions? The fourth area is around customer experience. So how you're providing an exceptional customer value proposition to your market. What are you doing outside of the box to really raise the bar around customer experience? And that fifth area is responsible tourism. It has previously, pre-2021 and the 2020 off year of the awards, responsible tourism was one of the 5 core areas of the award submission, but it has been improved somewhat, I think, and is really quite prescriptive in the sorts of things that the judges want to see you are doing in terms of responsible tourism. There are a few exceptions to those rules in terms of the core areas that the submissions focus on, and that just comes down to some categories which have particularly unique criteria. So for instance, ecotourism in that category, rather than a business development core area, it asks questions around environmental protection and sustainable resource use. For obvious reasons, the category and the criteria to meet eligibility for that category is ecotourism. Similarly, for cultural tourism, instead of business development, it talks about cultural protection and preservation, which again gives the entrant a great opportunity to talk about what makes their product a cultural tourism product. And tourism marketing and campaigns is really quite a standalone category. And as such, instead of having really any of those core areas that we just discussed, it talks about campaign development, execution and creativity and results, again, for pretty obvious reasons. So to go through each of those core areas in a little more detail, as I said, the COVID-19 section is where you start your whole story. It counts for 0 marks, but it's a really important part of your submission in terms of helping the judges to understand the context of your business over the qualifying period, which you're going to be talking about in the remainder of your submission. So as it says here, the judges are seeking an explanation of how global events have impacted your business, and it means you don't have to continue to explain why you did something or why something happened throughout your submission, because you've already set that scene right at the front. This section should not take up a lot of time, brain power, or stress whatsoever. And in fact, it's encouraged that you just use dot points here if you feel that that can adequately paint the picture of how these global events have impacted your product. And then the following areas, the questions will focus on things like business recovery and resilience, particularly in light of COVID-19 and how that's affected most of our industry. Improvement and innovation, your goals and strategies, measurable outcomes of innovation and development, measurable being the key word there, and the judges will be looking for data and for you to be backing up any sorts of claims with actual measures. Clearly identified target markets, and that will carry through a lot of your submission, and certainly the marketing section. You will really need to build a foundation to say, this is our target market, this is how we know they're our market, and then from then on show how you're reaching them, how you're talking to that market specifically through your marketing strategies and innovations, your marketing ROI, again, with measurable outcomes, commitment to quality customer experiences, inclusive practices, guest communication policies and procedures, measurements of customer satisfaction, your engagement with the greater tourism industry. These are a few things that they really sort of sum up what those core areas will focus on. Be encouraged, though, that every question guide within those categories will specifically hone in on these sorts of subcategories of focus. So you won't be expected to just pull these sorts of things out and remember that that's what should go in each area. You'll notice, if you haven't already had a look on our website, once you jump into the categories and look at each one by one, which is the first thing you need to do to decide which category you'd like to nominate in, you'll actually then see the question guide, most of which are about 3 or 4 pages at least long. And beneath each main header question will be criteria that both judges and yourselves should be looking at. And importantly, know that when a judge is looking at your submission, they're looking at exactly that same question guide, and they want to see each of those criteria ticked off in your answer. And in that responsible tourism area, important to understand that there are 3 sort of subtopics that the question is looking for you to answer to. So it's calling responsible tourism essentially how you're fulfilling environmental responsibilities, social and economic responsibilities, and ethical responsibilities, all of which can sound a little bit ambiguous or airy-fairy when you look at it on the screen like that. But again, in that questions guide, you'll find a lot more detail around what the submission is asking you to answer to for each of those areas. So what next? As I said, your first step is to choose a category that best suits your business. So if you head over to our website, you will see that there is a list of 25 categories. And as you click on those categories, there's a couple of choices. There's one document that lists all 25 categories with a brief synopsis of what it would mean to be eligible for that category. Having said that, you might look at that list of 25 and identify 1, 2, maybe 3 categories that stick out to you that actually suit your business, your product, your experience. The best thing to do from there then is to navigate into each individual category that you think might be appropriate for your business. And from there to read the questions that speak back to that category and to understand then, well, which is going to be most appropriate. You are allowed to enter more than one category. We don't necessarily discourage you from doing that, but it's important that you understand the level of work that a submission demands. It is not to be sneezed at. It's significant, and the time commitment to really doing justice to each of the questions is also significant. So consider how much time you want to dedicate to your award submission, and certainly in your first year, just doing one might be a really good place to start. There are a couple of sort of overarching categories, such as accommodation, in which you can only nominate for one. So you do need to just check the rules and regulations to make sure that what you're entering, you are A, eligible for, and B, you're within the rules and regulations. If you are unsure, please reach out to me. My email is there. We've also got a generic tourism awards email. Either of those is a great way to get in touch, and we'd be really happy to help to make sure that you're choosing the category that is the best to represent your business. So here's the list of this year's categories. There's really no change from last year, a couple of updates to wording in 1 or 2 of them, but the criteria and the eligibility remain the same. A couple of things to point out with all of the accommodation categories. So that's categories 17 through 23 inclusive, is that they're there is a level of needing to actually show that you fit into the star rating and or have met the accommodation standards for each of those categories. But the portal through which you'll do all of your submission will prompt you to do that, as well as to meet business standards for many of the categories as well. So you'll see there's things like categories 1 and 2 and categories 3 and 4 sound very similar, but the criteria within those categories will tell you which one you fit into, whether you're considered major or not major, for instance. And same goes for all of those accommodation categories. It's once you start to read through the criteria, hopefully one of them will stand out as the most appropriate for your business. The next step in the process is to nominate. I know that many people here this afternoon have already done that, which is awesome. So select your category and then you'll need to jump into the portal, which if you're an accredited operator, you'll be quite familiar with. If you're not, that will be something new. And again, please get in touch with myself if you need a hand there. And we've halved the entry fee once again this year to $99 per entry, and that fee includes all elements of the entrant support program. So like I said, today is just a very brief overview of process and introduction to what it means to enter the awards, but from here we have quite a rigorous and comprehensive entrant support program with 3 separate 2-hour, I think, sessions put aside over the coming months that you can jump into, or you can watch the recordings of following the online support sessions. And we also offer up to 3 hours one-on-one mentoring for every one of our entrants, and that's up to you to proactively make the most of. But very excitingly, we have Kelly, who's with us in the chat this afternoon, actually joining the TICT team next week. Can't wait to have Kelly come on board, and Kelly's got a bunch of experience in that mentoring and entrant support space, and she will be focusing heavily on that as a member of the TICT team for the coming months. Important to note that nominations close on Monday the 13th of June, and once you've nominated for a category and Monday the 13th of June has come and gone, you cannot change the category for which you've nominated. So you've got a couple of months still up your sleeve to make sure that you're really clear on which category you select for your business. Make sure that it's the best one for you. You do need to be tourism accredited, and you can start that process now and or during your submission. Certainly once you're submitted, you need to be fully accredited. There are a couple of exemptions though, which are listed there: festivals and events, categories 3 and 4, as well as the new tourism business category, category 24. If you haven't already, make sure you read the rules and regulations. That goes into a bit more detail around things like how many categories you can enter and where you can't enter to, word count and all of that finicky stuff. Really important that you're across all of that as well. And most importantly, please accept all the help that is included. We hope that by paying that entrant fee, you will make the most of it. And not all states offer the comprehensive entrant support program that we do here in Tassie, but it's what we see provides the most value to our entrants, and probably has a lot to do with why Tassie takes away such a swag of awards at the National Gala. So we've got entrant workshops scheduled for those 3 Wednesdays listed there, one in April, May and June. And we'll then kick off the one-on-one mentoring from the 20th of June all the way through to the 19th of August. And that will all be held via Zoom and will be on an appointment basis with our mentors, all of whom will have experience and expertise in the Tasmanian Tourism Awards program, if not the Australian Tourism Awards program, either by having been judges previously or having mentored entrants before and or having been entrants themselves. From there, it's a data gathering exercise, and there's no such thing as too much data. Keep in mind that the qualifying period for this year's awards program is from 1st July 2021 to 30th of June 2022. This can be a little bit of a minefield when you start writing a a submission, and you're used to working in a calendar year, or you're used to working in a financial year that has already begun. Keep in mind that anything that you're talking about in your submission must fit in this qualifying period. So if it happened early last year and it was amazing, unfortunately, you can't talk about it unless there is some outcome that impacted a time within the qualifying period. Same goes that once you start writing and it's past 30th of June, save it up for next year's submission, because it won't qualify for the 2022 awards. Things to start thinking about that you can even think about now before you necessarily start writing is, what are your goals and outcomes? If you don't have them written down somewhere, if you don't have a business plan or a marketing plan, now is the time to write one. Gather all the numbers, determine your industry and community involvement. How do you engage with the greater tourism industry here in Tasmania? How do you engage with your local community? How can you prove to the judges that you do that? How can you show them on paper that these are the things that you actually do to engage with the industry and community around you? Check your systems and processes. That doesn't mean you necessarily need to fix all your systems and processes, but make sure you understand how they operate and that they exist. Collect testimonials either online or in person. Now is the time to start talking to your guests and be gathering feedback. Find examples to back up your claims. If there's one thing that comes up in the judges' feedback time and time again, it's yes, but ... If you're going to make a claim about your success, the judges want to see an example that actually backs up that claim. Analyse your online presence. There is an online review element, which I'll talk about in just a moment with the judging. And importantly, access and understand Review Pro. If you are an accredited business, hopefully you will be familiar at least with the terminology Review Pro. If you're not familiar with actually accessing it, using it and understanding the sort of data that it spits out, it's very important now in the awards program that you do understand Review Pro, because that plays into the judging and your final score as well, which I'll go into when we talk about the judging process. Now's the time to be understanding how to access Review Pro though. Please don't leave it until 2 days before submissions are due. And start writing. You've got the questions. If you are confident that you've found the category that's right for you, the sooner you can start, the better, because the more that you can provide your mentor with when you go into that one-on-one mentoring period, the better. That will mean you can make the most of that mentoring time and really capitalize on them having the opportunity to read your submission as it is, or your draft around some answers to questions, and then they can guide you in the right way. For some categories, as I mentioned earlier, your business and or accommodation standards must be completed or updated. As I think I said, the portal will prompt you for that depending on the category for which you've entered. And just ensure that you give each question the amount of attention it needs based on the points it's worth. So again, that question guide and the category criteria that you'll find on our website really clearly steps out what each question is worth, and that should be how you divvy up your attention and time in terms of how much you give each area of your submission. Make sure you answer all parts of the question. The guidelines are there to help you do exactly that. And like I said, the judges will be using exactly the same guidelines to judge your submission. So if there is something that you haven't answered as part of the question, it will be a glaring omission to the judges. They will notice, and you will not get marks essentially for that part of your answer. The way that most judges will look at the question guide is to actually allocate a sort of divide the overarching score against each of the sub-criteria of that question. And if something hasn't been answered to, essentially those points just won't get allocated. You have a maximum of 10,000 words for your submission. And it's worth noting that feedback most years from most entrants is that that is conservative, that in order to really answer every question really well, they would have actually loved more words. So keep that in mind, that you know, you read maximum 10,000, you think, oh, well, I'll probably get mine bowled over in 4,000. You'll probably find that you won't be able to answer every question really well without using a fair chunk, if not all, of those 10,000 words. Keep in mind too that there aren't any tricks, so you can't stick a table in your submission and hope that that will, you know, throw another few thousand words in without anyone noticing. They will be included in the word count, and same goes for image captions. They are included in the word count where the caption exceeds 6 words. So if the caption is only 6 words, that's fine, they won't be included in the word count, but as soon as it goes 7 or over, that 7th word and any others will be included in your total word count. The COVID-19 section of your submission, as I mentioned earlier, is not included in the word count, but it's also not an invitation to rabbit on. So keep that concise, and then make sure that you use those other 10,000 words really well within the rest of your submission. This is just a quick snapshot of what the portal looks like once you're in. So you can see this is an example from last year for the major tourist attractions category. And this is the section called Tourism Excellence, which isn't a section this year, but a good example nonetheless that you can see at the top there. So the broad stroke that this part of the submission is about is tourism excellence. It has 20 marks attached to it. And then it had a number of sub questions underneath it, each of which had a fraction of that overall score attached to it. And you can also see that once again, just like the question guide, so this is essentially just a copy and paste from the question guide into the portal into which you're actually inputting your submission, that in italics under each subsection, it's explaining to you in further guidelines what it is that the question wants from you. So describe your involvement in the tourism industry. Well, what do we really want from you? Explain how you have been actively involved with and contributed to the tourism industry locally, regionally, and nationally. So you can see from that, you know, you need to talk about how you've been actively involved with it, how you've contributed to it, and ideally, you'd actually show the judges how you've done that locally, regionally, and nationally. And you know, you can be as prescriptive as that to actually spell it out. This is how we did it locally, regionally, nationally, using headings or tables or whatever it might be that you think is going to most clearly answer that question and get across to the judge that you understood the question and that you met every part of it as well. And then finally, submit your final entry. So submissions are due at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 7th of September. At the moment, it sounds like ages away. I can't stress enough, from having been on your side as well as having been on a judge's side, that the sooner you can start and to not be in the headspace of I've got months until September, the better. 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 7th of September is not a good time to be in the portal submitting your submission. If you can possibly get in hours or even days before, you will have a better chance of not running into any technical glitches when every other entrant is trying to do the same. So yeah, if you feel confident that you've found the category for which you're eligible and you're ready to start writing, my advice is start writing. At least start gathering data and have it ready to go for when you can sit down and really give this your attention, preferably several months out from that deadline. So just to recap all of the key dates, nominations close on Monday the 13th of June, and after that date you cannot change the category for which you've nominated, and you also you're not then eligible for a refund of the entry fee if you decide not to go ahead with your submission. So make sure that you're really confident that you've chosen the right category and that you are prepared to go through with your submission. We have those entrant workshops, each of which will be held online and led by Kelly on the 27th of April, 18th of May and 8th of June. Time is TBC, but as I said, we will record each of those workshops. So if you can't make it live, and you can certainly access them after the fact on our website. Mentoring will then kick off from the 20th of June and go all the way through to the 19th of August. It will be on an appointment basis. It will be online, and each entrant has up to 3 hours available to them of that one-on-one mentoring. It does include reading time for your mentor though. So if it's going to take them, if you've got an almost ready to go submission, that might take 30, 45, 60 minutes even for the mentor to read and then provide the feedback. So that would be a discussion that you'd have with your mentor around how you're going to allocate those 3 hours. Submissions are due at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, the 7th of September. And then there are site visits for most categories. They will begin shortly before the submission due date from the 27th of August to the 24th of September. And again, they will be organised in cahoots with you at a time that suits both you and the site judge. And I'll go into what that site visit involves in just a moment. We'll be announcing the finalists on Wednesday the 5th and Thursday the 6th of October in Launceston and Hobart respectively. And then of course the all-important gala dinner will be on Friday the 4th of November. The Australian Tourism Awards, at which we hope to have a huge contingent of Tasmanian finalists again, will be held in Sydney in March 2023 on a date to be confirmed. So we'll jump into the judging process. I'm conscious that I'm probably already over time. I definitely am. I'll try to race through this, but it's important that you understand how judging works. Each category is judged by 3 independent judges, and by independent we mean that those judges don't know who else is judging the category they're judging, and they have nothing to do with the other judges until deliberation day. So essentially a judge will have access to all of the submissions in all of the categories if there's more than one that they are judging, and they will independently and privately go through and judge each of those submissions against the criteria that we've talked about today. Most categories will also require a site visit judge, and that site visit judge is separate to the submission judges. They don't see or read the submission. They just come and visit the site to verify the things that have been said in the submission, essentially. So when I say they don't see the submission, they can see it in terms of verifying what it says, but they don't judge it. They have nothing to do with allocating any marks to the submission. They simply allocate some marks against their site visit. The judges put in a lot of volunteer hours to determine the winner of each category. I can personally speak for that. I had the opportunity to judge last year, and it is no small feat. Certainly probably has no competition on what it takes to write a submission, but then to sit and read tens of thousands of words and to somehow rank each of those submissions against each other is a massive job, and one that the judges take very seriously. They wouldn't be doing it on a voluntary basis unless they really cared, and we have a lot of judges joining us this year who have years of experience at both the state and national level, and it is their great joy and passion to do this. They all have to sign a confidentiality agreement, which means they don't talk about what they've read with anyone, including their fellow judges, and they all declare that any conflicts of interest. So essentially, once we have all of the nominations and we have all of our judges, they see a list of the nominations, and if they have any conflict of interest, having worked with, played with, over experienced any of the products, they have to declare a conflict of interest, and they will automatically not be allocated to that whole category in order to rule them out from judging anything with whom they have a conflict of interest. All of our judges are guided and advised by a chair of judges who sits independently yet again and makes sure that all of the judges are following the judging criteria and that they understand what it means to judge a certain category. And we also have independent auditors who oversee the whole process and who then join us on deliberation day, at which all of our judges come together. For the first time, they find out who on the judging panel judged the same categories as them, and they must then come to a decision over many painstaking hours of which submission they felt ranked highest and so forth throughout the category. So what they're looking for, as I've mentioned, is that they're following the exact questions, including the tips that you see. So what you see in the portal is what the judges use when they are judging every single submission. They're looking for a business that stands out, that tells the full story, and we know that there are plenty of stories to tell, particularly in this qualifying period, and it's not about the most profit or who has the most visitors or who has the most success on paper. It is about that story. You need to clearly respond to all questions, demonstrate passion, show that you work collaboratively, and as I've mentioned a couple of times now, provide evidence of all of those things. Don't just make claims. The judges need to see evidence of everything to back it up. Site visits, as I mentioned, are included for nearly every category. They are conducted shortly before or soon after your submission has been received. The site judges have a checklist to follow and they need about an hour of your time. However, there is no obligation to give them a free experience of your product. And in fact, there is no expectation of that. It's really just a sit down for an hour to tick and flick that you have a number of documents and to verify that you are the business that you said you are in your submission. And you'll get more detail about site visits as you get closer to that time. So what does it take to win? Well, to be named a finalist in Tasmania, you need to achieve a total of at least 70% as a total of all the scoring elements. So that means the submission score, the site visit, if it's applicable for your category, the online review, which looks at your presence in the digital environment, and a consumer rating score. And that's the Review Pro thing, which I'll touch briefly on again in just a moment. Each element of the scoring is weighted differently across different categories, so check yours. So in some categories, the submission score might be weighted more heavily than a site visit, for instance. That's a terrible example, but just check how each element is weighted in your category. And the winner of each category goes straight through to represent Tasmania in their category in the National Tourism Awards. So just to give you a little bit more info about that online review and consumer rating, the online review is essentially a list that one person will sit down and spend a couple of days going through, this is a judge, going through every single nominated business or product and checking what how they present in the digital environment. So Facebook, TripAdvisor, Instagram, Google sort of search engine optimization, and you'll have access to see the sorts of things that the online review is looking for. And again, it's very much a tick and flick. Do they, don't they? Is it good? Is it satisfactory? Is it poor? And that spits out a score. The consumer rating is something really important too. That's something that we generate from a GRI, which is generated by Review Pro. You must have a certain amount of reviews through Review Pro, which takes reviews from a number of online review platforms, but not all online review platforms. So please make sure you are familiar with Review Pro. And as long as you have gathered enough of those reviews within a certain period, being the qualifying period, it will spit out a GRI, and that then gets ranked in as part of your scoring. So this is why we say, please get familiar with Review Pro now. There are ways to make sure that you have enough data in there to spit that GRI out. And it's important that you do, because if you can't produce a GRI, you will automatically receive 0 for that part of your score, and that is massively avoidable. So please don't end up in that place. If you've never heard of Review Pro, or you're not familiar with how it works or how a GRI is generated, please look into it now, not in a couple of months' time, because we can absolutely make sure that you've got a GRI when you need it as part of your judging and scoring. So with that, team, I have gone so over time, and so I won't ask you to sing out any questions now, nor will I can't even see the chat box, so I'm not sure if there's anything in it. Apologies, I'm working off an interesting screen today. But I really do invite you, if you've got any questions whatsoever, any concerns coming out of today or before today or after today, please get in touch with us. I am, as far as the awards program goes, the coordinator, and Kelly, who I've mentioned, is coming on board as an industry advisor with us here at TICT. But as far as the awards program is concerned, she's a mentor and very well versed in all things categories and criteria as well. So we are here to help, and we really do mean that, and want to see our Tasmanian entrants succeed and enjoy the process. So please feel free to reach out at tourismawards@tict.com.au, or my personal email address, which I think is earlier in the presentation. And as I said, I'll put this presentation up on our website, emma.aj@tict.com.au. I will now let you all go. I can't see any of your faces anyway, but I hope everyone has a wonderful Easter. Thank you again so very much for joining us this afternoon, and hope to hear from you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Emma.